underscore Gagnon. That's Gag. The border up there.
We're doing well. We're from an electoral initial look when a team or the other. The fact that the Ravens have that home field edge, it makes me think that kind of, Baltimore in a close game is what to expect here. A lot of folks are fired up over that Miami winning streak. They scored only 14 points and got very lucky to beat the Rams. They were fairly lucky to beat the Jets. They did play well against San Francisco, but only held on for a one-score victory over a team that's lost.
They're not a juggernaut. I mean, I don't think anybody's confusing this with that. But I know one thing: confidence breeds success, and they're starting to feel that, and they're getting healthier, from what I hear from everybody in Miami.
Yeah, they are, and that offensive line, they've been doing a lot of this with a gutted offensive line, and that's really what's most impressive, because that's really what's hurt this team so much over the years. Is Ryan Tannehill, as you know, gets sacked as much as any quarterback, or a lot more than any quarterback in the National Football League since he came into the league 5 years ago. And we've always sort of chalked that up to the line, and even, last year and the year before, the line started to get better. They brought in Brandon Albert and made some smart draft picks. And yet he still continued to get sacks. And so we started to put that on Tannehill. The one thing that sort of occurred to me is it's probably a lot to do with the running game. And that's the one thing that's been the biggest difference this season, regardless of the injuries to the O-line or Tannehill's play, both of which have been inconsistent, is the running game's been fantastic. And Jay Ajayi is one of the best young running backs in the league. I believe leads all NFL running backs to 5.2 yards per carry. He's been great. And so having that balance, I think, is crucial, especially if you're going to try to continue to sustain what you're doing. Very hard to sustain things in this league nowadays without that offensive balance, and they've had that. So, that's a big factor as well. Again, you're right, not a juggernaut, but a good football team, and have a quarterback who's capable of doing some great things, and a running back who might be an all-pro this year, and an offensive line that's getting healthier, and obviously we know they've got a ton of talent, especially up front on the defensive side of the ball. So it's going to be a challenge for sure, and the right Joe Flacco has to show up, and ideally Terrence West or someone in that backfield has to do something rather consistently to kind of counteract that balance. But I think it's going to be a good one. I think it's going to come down to the fourth quarter as this type of game is wont to do.
I don't think anybody's going to portray any of these teams in the AFC North as being juggernauts at this point. Pittsburgh's the only other team that matters at this point. Taking care of business against Cincinnati. The Ravens will have a chance to do that on New Year's Day. But, nothing better than watching the fish fry at 1 o'clock here in Baltimore would be coming home and watching the Steelers and the Giants. This is a tougher game for the Steelers, too, right? I mean, we talk so much about our schedule at the end, and the Ravens having to go to New England, having to go to Pittsburgh, having to go to Cincinnati. The Ravens have Miami and Philadelphia still left on this schedule. Pittsburgh at least draws Cleveland at the end, where they're going to get something automatic. But there's nothing automatic about the Giants right now. We're feeling pretty good about themselves.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when we talk about the top of the AFC North. Both teams are kind of going up against, at home, are going up against teams that are really on fire right now, but no one really trusts. And that's as we just established, that's the case with Miami, because there are still concerns regarding the consistency there and regarding the teams they've beaten on this winning streak. Well, the Giants are sort of in the same boat. A little more impressive on their winning streak, at least at the get-go. Obviously, they beat Baltimore. They beat Philadelphia. Cincinnati, which maybe isn't as impressive as it looked even at the time, based on the fact the Bengals have just been awful. But the Bears, the Browns, I mean, that doesn't mean too much. They only beat the Bengals by a single point when they did. Only beat the Rams by a single score, just like the Dolphins did on the road. So none of their wins overly impressive. Nobody really trusts the running game. Great offensive line that they've built really smartly over the last few years. A veteran quarterback in Eli Manning who usually can get the job done. And obviously, Odell Beckham Jr. is playing probably his best football of the season right now. They invested heavily in that defense, and it's been a lot better this season than it was last year. And I think they're, all in all, if we're comparing the two opponents to those AFC North teams, I think they are the much better team than the Miami Dolphins, but I also think the Pittsburgh Steelers are probably a better team than the Baltimore Ravens. So, we'll see how it plays out. I think it's going to be another close game in Pittsburgh. I think Ben Roethlisberger is finally starting to kind of hit his stride now. He's come back from that injury. He looks fresh again. Antonio Brown's at the top of his game right now. Le'Veon Bell is coming off, 3 consecutive very solid games. and the Steelers have won back-to-back impressive, games, only giving up 16 points on defense albeit against the Browns and the Colts, but still on the road to do that is pretty impressive. So, right now, I think, you're in for, whether the Ravens beat Miami earlier in the day, I think you're in for, at the very least, a very dramatic and exciting one in the 4 o'clock time slot. And who knows, the Giants can absolutely extend their winning streak to 7 there.
Brad, you expect the Steelers to be playing that home game the first week of January, do you?
I guess I kind of left that out there. I have a thing, and it stinks on Baltimore radio, and I have to say this, but I don't love Joe Flacco. I never have. I've never trusted him.
Well, that's your problem in Canada. That he's my guy. I go to war with Joe, and and I know it's a little choppy from time to time, but there's been nothing ideal about the offensive line or the passing game or the running game for him this year, and yet they're still in first place. So, as Joe once said to me when I was writing the book after he won the Super Bowl MVP, we win a lot of football games around here. Still my favorite quote from him.
That is a good one, and listen, believe me, I work with NFL players on a daily basis. I'm on the phone with them all the time. I don't want to belittle what Joe did in 2011. It was incredible, that run alone, and I say this whenever I talk about Eli Manning too. It's another one where folks are putting him in the Hall of Fame because of the Super Bowl title or the Super Bowl MVP or whatever it might be, and unfortunately, the entire body of work doesn't make me conclude that a week 13 game is going to go his way. You know what I mean? So whereas I can love a guy for what he did in one specific circumstance, and I can see him even as a potential Hall of Famer in Eli Manning's case based on 2 playoff runs, on a week-to-week basis when I'm breaking down football games and I see an 11-10 touchdown interception ratio, and you're right, it's not all on him. It's on the offensive line. It's on the lack of balance and lack of consistency in the running game. It's on injuries. It's on a lot of things. But the fact is that it's a team that's lacked consistency this season, and really obviously for several seasons in a row now. So, I do think that the difference there when I compare those two teams is I look at those the 3 Bs, right? The Ben Roethlisberger, Big Ben, Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell, and I don't see a counter to that in Baltimore. And so, the schedule is obviously something that's going to, maybe decide this in the end, but I do think the Steelers have a little bit more firepower, and that might be the difference.
He is Brad Gagnon. He covers all things NFL for Bleacher Report up in Toronto, Canada. If you go to his Twitter at Brad_Gagnon, every time I go to your Twitter, a couple things strike me first. Toronto's a beautiful city. You have a beautiful girlfriend, and every time I see you in that Blue Jays gear, I want to stand up and sing, "Okay, Blue Jays, let's play," because it's just, when I see the Blue Jays logo, I just think of OK Blue Jays. That's what I do.
Well, that's a good reaction, because I thought you were going to say, I want to throw up in my mouth a little bit.
Look, you outkick your coverage, man. There's no doubt about that. It graces you to have your girlfriend up on the front of your Twitter, but you are wearing all this Blue Jay swag up there. So, it's the off season here. Give it a break. Put a Maple Leafs jersey on, bro. They kicked the Capitals' ass on Saturday night. I had Trotzy on the show this week. What's gotten into the Maple Leafs? They're downright mediocre and uptrending as well.
They're so young and so talented, but also, of course, so tragically flawed when you're that young, right, and that talented. And so they lose these games 6-5 and 5-4, where their young stars dazzle on the offensive side, but don't really do much. The good thing for me is I don't have to go through that heart. That up and down, because I am actually a Montreal Canadiens fan, so I should change my avatar to that.
So you're front running right now. Yeah, you're front running right now with your goaltender. I know how you're rolling. Brad, back to the NFL here for a minute. I tell you what, Kansas City, they're not impressive in any way other than like Joe Flacco. They seem to find a way to win. I was very, very impressed by the Alex Smith drive at the end in Denver against that defense late at night, in the cold, in the altitude, getting the 2-point conversion, and then finding a way to win that game. To me, that was one of those, if you see Kansas City in January, and we might, if we do win the division, see Kansas City, I don't really want to see Kansas City. I don't like, they frighten me in some way.
Yeah, well, this is a team that's won 18 of their last 21 games. I mean, this is a team that's been as good as anyone in football, dating back to the midway point last season, despite the fact Justin Houston hasn't been around for a lot of those, and he's their best at least one of their best defensive players, along with maybe Eric Berry and Marcus Peters. And so they've done that without him. They've done that almost entirely without Jamal Charles. To their credit, they've had other guys step in and do a good job in the running game. And they've done that without a deep passing game. So again, Andy Reid is that guy who turns an 8-8 or 9-7 caliber team into 11 or 12 win team. And he's doing it again this season. And you mentioned that drive at the end, that, first of all, I'll mention that saved my fantasy football season, but also it gave them a victory over the Broncos. It really
you have Alex Smith as your fantasy quarterback?
No, it was a myriad circumstances, but I had Travis Kelce, so I needed them to get into overtime and get extra points out of Kelce, and he actually got me over the edge in overtime.
I don't play fantasy football, but every once in a while I let a guy like you nerd out about it. But I was just thinking, do you have Alex Smith? I mean, really? You expect to win? I'm sorry. The Chiefs expect to win with him, though,
I tweeted my excitement about it and said, just so you all know, though, to my Twitter followers, I know no one cares, because no one cares less about anyone else's fantasy football team. No one's less interested in that. But regardless, what the main takeaway from that drive I had, Nestor, is they learned. That was what killed them last year, is that they didn't know how to run a 2-minute drill. Of course, it didn't help that they can't throw the ball past the sticks and that they have that allergy to throwing deep. But they were hilarious, of course, in that unless you're a Chiefs fan, hilarious in that drive against the Patriots at the end of the playoff game, where it just seemed like they thought they were preserving a victory rather than trying to salvage something. And in this case, it was a little different. It was a hurry-up. They were calm and cool and collected, and yet they were still moving at a very quick pace, and they got the ball into the end zone. And then they did the exact same thing by setting up the field goal from Cairo Santos, the bank shot, to win the game at the end of overtime. So if that indicates that the Chiefs have found a way to run a 2-minute drill in addition to everything else they can do right, they are very scary out in January.
Detroit is headed to New Orleans this week. Boy, you look up and you see what New Orleans does week after week on offense. I've watched them play a couple of games. I mean, it's not Kurt Warner in his prime, but boy, anybody was writing Drew Brees off, and I've only done that every year for the last 15 years. He's going to the Hall of Fame, and this is a little bit, to me, they're not going anywhere. They're not winning anything this year. But this is a little bit of an exclamation point that he can win with any other 10 guys. It really is incredible. And it's a tribute to Sean Payton and their offense as well.
Yeah, this is the exclamation mark, I think, on that Hall of Fame resume. I think the fact that at 37, he's having arguably the best season of his career with less support than he's had in many, many, if not most of his previous seasons is remarkable. And I know a lot of quarterbacks, have that, cliche aging like fine wine. He's like career when he won his